All right. Coming in next, we're going to jump some NBA talk. So I want to talk about the top 6 teams. Remember, there is a 10 team. Justin Graves says, how old is Vince Carter? Like 65. He played until in his 40s. He played in the league a long time, with Atlanta being the last team. So much, he was old enough so much so that I know that last year in the NBA bubble, he came out and they didn't make the bubble because the bubble wasn't every team. And as he sat there, he um, he was broadcasting for ESPN. He looked like he had been broadcasting for a very long time, but he was honestly just fresh off of COVID Atlanta team to now broadcast. They get both shots. They get both points. Okay, we're down by 5 to the Hawks. Playing basketball and doing a podcast at the same time. We're doing this. Put it up there. Get it in there. All right. This is a bad choice. Not stopped. Get the rebound. Good job. Okay, so let's talk about some NBA basketball. So if you don't know, this year we're in the second half of the season. The All-Star break has happened. There was very good sort of All-Star weekend stuff happened. The big thing to think about is we're in the second half of the season. This year the playoffs are different. Normally it's 8 teams on each side. You make the top 8, you make the playoffs, they play the NBA playoffs. This year, the NBA playoffs are going to be 10 teams. And then the teams 7 through 10 will have a play-in weekend to play against teams 1 through 6. Tonight we're going to focus on who is teams 1 through 6 on both sides of the NBA. So in the West, and we're going to go 1 through 6. In the West, the standings are the Jazz, the Suns, the Lakers, the Clippers, the Nuggets, and the Blazers. Now, we'll talk about each kind of team and share some points as we go, but I also want to share in the East. The East, you have leading the East is the 76ers with first-year Philadelphia coach Doc Rivers. Outside of the 76ers, you also have, hold on, driving the lane. Yes. The 76ers, the Nets, the very loaded Nets, the Milwaukee Bucks, the Miami Heat, the Atlanta Hawks, and the Charlotte Hornets, who had an unfortunate injury to Lonzo Ball recently. So things for the Hornets are definitely going to change. Um, so, as we talk about, before we get into anything, what has happened in those top 6 teams on both sides, the injury bug is definitely starting to hit. Joel Embiid, recently hurt off a dunk play. Anthony Davis, AD, is not back yet with the Lakers. LeBron James recently had an injury. He's going to be out for the Lakers. So there's a lot of injuries that are sort of impacting. Plus, Lonzo Ball, who's not as big of an injury for his team as those two, although the Hornets are attempting to make a run, which good for them. The big storyline to talk about in the East is how much the East has shifted. If you look at the East earlier this season, the names that you would hear would be like Boston would be up there, and Atlanta was struggling. The Washington Wizards, while Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook are still putting up crazy numbers, are not producing wins to help them get to where they need to go. So the Wizards are still very much struggling outside of the pictures. The Heat were having a tough time during the season, but have started to make a run. The Bucks are probably, in my opinion, going to settle into third. I think it's a matter of time in the East, especially with Embiid out, for the James Harden, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, now Blake Griffin, Brooklyn Nets to start taking off and leading their way to first place in the East going into the playoffs. In the West, with LeBron and AD both down, the Lakers are going to be kind of a question mark. Will they make the playoffs? Absolutely. But you have to remember last year's LA Lakers, which when they beat the Miami Heat were like a tiger playing with its food. That was a nice screenshot, by the way. We're like a tiger playing, by the way, a score update to all of our podcast listeners. It's Atlanta 30, Memphis 29 as I try to battle my way to a win. Throwback Grizzlies uniform. Tuesday night, 8 o'clock on Twitch. Rutledge by himself. Special guest coming in the second half. I was saying. The Lakers of old and the Lakers last time around, they definitely had a lot more depth. Remember, Rajon Rondo is gone. Dwight Howard is gone. Um, Kyle Kuzma has not been the large, um, the large focus of what's going on in the Lakers. He's not as talked about as much as we've talked about before. He's not coming up as much, and he has his moments, but he's not a big headliner player. So the big question marks are with the Lakers hurt. On the teams that you want to watch in the East, of course, we talked about the Nets. Blake Griffin is adjusting to his team, and PJ Tucker is on the Bucks. He can be defensively, he can shoot. They're getting new roles. Both things to note is that a lot of their minutes for Blake Griffin and PJ Tucker are not with the true stars. PJ Tucker doesn't put in a lot of minutes with Giannis. Blake Griffin's not putting in a lot of minutes with the big three for Brooklyn. So these were NBA trade deadline moves in the middle of the trade that these two teams were adding depth to help them become bigger. And that has been sort of the thing that Connor and I have talked about all year with Milwaukee is, okay, what are they going to do to add depth? How are they going to help Giannis? How are they going to give that piece? Because Giannis has shown he's a very, very good player. He can't carry that team by himself. He has to have people around him. Wide open. Wide open three by Atlanta. 35-29. I spoke too soon. We talked about Embiid out. We talked about LeBron out. The West, the team to watch, in my opinion, is going to be the Phoenix Suns. Chris Paul just put up his 10,000th assist. They move the ball around and they have climbed up the rankings. They were, I believe, in third place when Connor and I did our segment about them. You can find on our YouTube channel. All about everything to do with the Phoenix Suns. So the Suns are definitely a team to be reckoned with. The Jazz are still doing very well. They're still producing a lot of points. Their offense is steady, but they don't do well with holding down the first quarter. So it's going to be to see where do the Suns and the Jazz finish in the top six as they dial their way through the stretch to get to the playoffs. This top six lineup you have, I don't think you're going to change a lot, except there may be one sinker in this group on both sides, and I'm going to call out the LA Clippers. They're doing all right. They're making some moves. They're making some wins. But when they come out flat, they come out flat. And they can kind of get in some skids. And they've had to have some stop the bleeding stops. So Damian Lillard and the Blazers are really starting to put things together. Damian Lillard statistically sits up there very high on a lot of different stat points in the NBA. You know, when it's Dame time, it's game time. And he's bringing it and he's proving it. The other team to look at as we go through this NBA, someone I want to talk about, it's actually on the screen, is the Atlanta Hawks. And as being from Georgia and knowing that the Hawks were okay, and you know Trae Young needed some leadership, since Nate McMillan has taken over as their interim head coach, and Connor and I broke down who we thought or who some big names were out there, the Hawks are 8-0. They are 8-0. They're undefeated. They had to scramble for one of those wins, but the Hawks are 8-0. Since then, they've moved up the ranks. They have gotten their way to be fifth in the league. So that is a big thing for Atlanta. Great thing to see for that team as they were looking for the really big fresh restart. Trae Young is a great talent. He's a great piece to build a team around, especially with how many times, I mean, look at him go. For those on the podcast, Clint Capella. Trae Young to Clint Capella completely destroys me in the paint. As I clearly am starting to show that I don't know what I'm doing. But it's for the love of the game. Oh, blocked by Clint Capella. Get the rebound. Get in there. Oh, come on, guys. Finish. There we go. All right. Brendan Clark scores 37-35. So Atlanta Hawks have been undefeated. The reason I talk so much about Clint Capella and been calling him out is he actually leads the league in, I have it written down, Clint Capella leads the league in rebounds. So he's getting the ball and getting in there in the glass, crashing it in, helping feed it to Trae Young, who is a top producer for assists. So the Hawks have the pieces, and they really have a shot, and they have the youth. Not as much in college basketball, because we saw in the NBA and with the bubble, professionals can rebound differently. But what's going to go down the stretch, especially as the injury bug hits a bunch of different teams, Joel Embiid, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Lonzo Ball, as an example. As teams start to see people get hurt and they're having to go to their depth, younger teams that maybe have not suffered from injuries yet are going to start to rise to the occasion. That's why you see Miami is starting to bounce back. Atlanta's starting to bounce back. I believe that's why Miami did so well in the bubble, is because of the fact that they had a lot of youth on their team, plus they had the right elder guidance. So there's a good shot that you're going to see some teams make some big moves in this tournament. Remember, top 6, automatic locks, 7 through 10, have to play a play-in tournament. The rest, just hope for the best in the lottery. So that's kind of my NBA talks as we're here in the last 40 seconds. My teams that I'm going to kind of keep an eye on this year and for the rest of the thing, if I could pick one in the West, I'm going to say that my team is the Phoenix Suns. Oh, that dunk hurt. I got dunk faced all over. The one in the West is definitely going to be the Phoenix Suns, but the team in the East to look at I am going to take is the Atlanta Hawks. New leadership, fresh start, young talent, young good talent. Something to be reckoned with. So I'm taking the Hawks and the Suns to both come in and be teams that you should watch going in towards as they make playoff runs. How deep they'll go in the playoffs for both of them, I think, is very different. I think the Suns, if they keep going the way they are, could go really deep. Atlanta, I don't know. But that's our first half of game. As it's 43-39, I'm down by 4. Rutledge, Friendstream Sports, Tuesday at 8 o'clock. Here playing Throwback Grizzlies uniforms. Shout out to Justin Graves once again for coming out to visit and hang out with us tonight. Shout out to everyone that came out to